Oda is an average high schooler, so average in fact that half of his classmates forgot that he was even here in the first place. He spends most of his time just reading isekai novels by himself, and the reason he is always alone isn't because he's being bullied or anything, he just prefers it this way. The idea of someone coming over to talk to him is always so anxiety-inducing that it's easier to just blend in and be invisible. All of a sudden, the room goes dark as a black sphere appears in the middle of the classroom and a summoning circle is formed right above everyone in class. In the next moment, they find themselves in the middle of a large hall. An old bald dude gets their attention and says the king has something important to tell them. The students are understandably upset about the interdimensional kidnapping, so they start demanding to know what the meaning of this is. But the advisor couldn't care less about their concerns, so he tells them all to shut up and pay attention. Once they are all quiet, the king speaks up and introduces himself as Morrigan, the ruler of the kingdom of Redis. He tells them all of the kingdom is under attack by demons, and only the power of a hero from another world is strong enough to defeat the demon lord. After hearing those words, Oda realizes this is the exact same scenario as all those isekai novels he had been reading, and he's actually starting to look forward to this a little. The advisor then states that it is time to identify the hero among them, so he invites everyone to place their hands upon this crystal ball so he can inspect their statuses. The first one up is Daisuke, so he walks up to the ball and is told to say the word status to display his stats. He was hoping that he might be the hero, but it turns out that he's just an animal trainer with an average power of 450. The advisor tells him there's no need to be disappointed since he is still only level 1, but his stats already far exceed those of an average person in this world. A few of the other students get classes like a disenchanter, a knight, and even a healer, and the advisor is pleased with the diverse range of strong skills the summoned students have. He also informs the students that they can open a personal status window by saying status on their own, and when Oda tries it out, he discovered that he's an assassin. That doesn't come as a huge surprise to him considering his personality, but something he does find concerning is the fact that his stats are abnormally high. Earlier, Daisuke had stats around 450, and the advisor said that was already much higher than average people in this world, but Oda's stats are at 1,800. So what's with the massive disparity? It's Tsukasa's turn on the crystal ball next, so he places his hand on it, and to his surprise, he finds out that he is the hero. The other students aren't all that surprised by this outcome since Tsukasa has always been a prodigy in athletics, academics, and leadership, so he was the most likely to become a hero. The advisor begins praising him for having such high stats since most people cap out around 500 points, but his are around 900. However, if 900 is really all a hero gets, then Oda is even more confused by the state of his own stat screen because it makes no sense for his stats to be so damn high. Nanase asks Oda if he'd like to go next since there aren't many people left, but the idea of revealing his stats to everyone here scares him because he has read enough isekai to know that there's something off about the king and his daughter. He can't even be certain that they were telling the truth about the demon lord they mentioned earlier, so revealing his stats to them would put him at a serious disadvantage. However, simply saying he doesn't want to show his stats would draw too much attention, so he looks at his stat screen and realizes that he has a max-level skill called Presence Concealment, and as soon as he activates it, he practically vanishes from the group without anyone noticing. Even Nanase, who was talking to him just a moment ago, completely forgets about Oda's existence as soon as he is out of sight, just like my dad. Once the advisor has taken note of everyone's ability, he tells them that equipment for their training will be provided soon, but for now, they will be taken to the bedrooms that have been prepared for them. Oda breathes a sigh of relief. He passed the verification unnoticed, so now all that's left is for him to use his skills to gather information. But as he's walking through the halls, he notices a camera spying on the students from the ceiling, and now he is absolutely certain that something nefarious is going on here. Since no one knows he's here anymore, he's going to have to fend for himself until he can figure things out, and fortunately, he manages to find an old bedroom that the castle uses to store equipment, so he decides to spend the night here. He looks through the available gear and finds some stuff that would suit an assassin, so he puts it on and heads out so he can start gathering as much info as possible. Thanks to his high stats, he is easily able to leap hundreds of feet into the air, so getting around won't be an issue for him. And with his concealment ability, he effortlessly sneaks into the king's room undetected and overhears him talking to the princess about some kind of plan. Morrigan also reminds her to make sure she doesn't let any of the students go into the castle's archive, because it'd be bad if they were to learn the truth. Oda still doesn't know what exactly their plan is, but he can tell that it's not something good, so he is tempted to just stab the king to death right here and end it once and for all. But doing that would be too reckless, at least not until he has gathered more info. The next morning, Oda sneaks into the dining hall and grabs a piece of bread to eat. He contemplates whether he should undo his concealment and tell his classmates that the king is up to no good, but he doubts they would believe him. Just then, Tsukasa walks in and he has something he wants to say. It's clear that they became stronger by coming to this world, and he feels like it is their duty to use their newfound power to help defeat the Demon Lord just like the king asked them to. So he would like to ask for everyone's support in achieving that goal, and they all seem to be on board with the idea. Oda realizes that the fact that they all see the king and princess as allies means there's no way they'd believe him if he told them about what he overheard last night, so he decides to gather some more information before doing anything else. Later that day, the students all gather outside for their first combat lessons, and they are introduced to Saren Mithray, the knight commander of Redis's last battalion. He says he will be in charge of training them for the next month, and after that, they will be allowed to go into the dungeon to try out their new skills. Oda has been watching from around the corner for a while now, and he's not happy about how blindly enthusiastic his classmates are about becoming heroes, but there's nothing he can do about it in his current situation, so he decides to go gather more intel. However, as he is leaving, Saren seems to notice him, so he puts his assistant, Jill, in charge of the students and follows Oda out. Oda eventually stops as a fountain and wonders where he should go to gather intel, but all of a sudden, Saren appears behind him and asks if something is wrong. Oda is shocked that someone was able to spot him since he's sure his concealment skill is still active, but Saren tells him he doesn't have to worry too much because his skill is still effective on everyone else, but he is a bit of a special case. Saren possesses enchanted eyes that allow him to see minor temperature changes, so noticing Oda wasn't difficult. Oda can't risk having his cover blown, so he reaches for his dagger intending to take Saren out, but Saren tells him there's no need for that because he isn't going to tell the king or princess about him. Oda is surprised to hear that since he figured the Knight Commander would be loyal to the king, but Saren's loyalty is a bit complicated, so as things stand, he's got no reason to snitch on Oda. He and Oda sit down by the entrance, and Oda tells Saren that he has been trying to find a way to get into the archives because he knows nothing about magic or how this world works. For example, his concealment skill was maxed out from the start, but he has no idea how to level up any of his other skills. Saren offers to teach him how to level up since he wouldn't find that info in the archives even if he tried. Oda is getting a little excited because he has been hoping that he'd get a chance to do some real assassin training, but he doesn't like accepting help for free, so he asks Saren if there's anything he can do for him in return. Saren says he'd just like to hear a bit about what Oda's home world is like since he thinks it'll be interesting to learn about, so the two officially start working together. Over the next few weeks, Oda learns about this world's history and how there are separate continents with elves and beast folk out there. After that, Saren moves on to training Oda while Jill handles the training of the other heroes. Things have been going well for a while now, but one night Oda comes to meet with Saren because he found a strange book in the castle's archives. Saren already knows what this is about since he was the one who hid that book in there for Oda to find, and it contains details regarding a coup Saren is planning. He says the king is no longer fit to rule this land because he's willing to pay a horrific price for his own personal gain, and that doesn't sit well with Saren or the other knights, but they'd like to keep things as peaceful as possible to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Oda thinks things would have been a lot easier if he had just killed the king when he had the chance, but Saren tells him he made the right choice by sparing him in the moment. Killing a man is not an easy burden to bear, especially not for a teenager like him. Just because he is an assassin doesn't mean he is obligated to kill, and if he truly intends to return home someday, he should keep his killing to an absolute minimum. Oda appreciates Saren's advice, but he asks him why he has been looking out for him so much even though he stands to gain nothing. Saren says he has high hopes for Oda, and he's not just talking about his stats. When he was first summoned, Oda was the only one who actually thought things through and didn't just go with the flow. Plus, there aren't many who could endure what Oda has been through and come out stronger. Oda gets a little embarrassed since he has lived his entire life being ignored by everyone around him, and this is the first time someone has ever actually praised him so much. Saren is glad it made him happy, but he does have a favor to ask of him since he could really use some help with the planned coup, and Oda says he will consider it. By the end of the month, the training of the heroes is finally over, so it is time for them all to head down into the dungeon. But while they are being paraded through the streets, Oda notices someone who has been glaring at them from the sidelines, and he wonders why she holds such animosity towards the heroes, so he sneaks up behind her to ask. The girl is startled by Oda's sudden appearance, but he assures her that he means no harm. He just wants to know why she seems so hostile towards the heroes when all the other people seem to support them. The girl asks him if he really doesn't know what the kingdom has to sacrifice to summon them here. But this is Oda's first time hearing of any sacrifice, so he's not sure what she's talking about. She could have easily told him what it was, but instead she tells Oda he should find out the answer for himself since this won't be the last time they see each other. As the party heads into the dungeon, they are forced to battle their way through a large group of orcs, but no matter how many they kill, even more always end up appearing. Tsukasa suggests they should all retreat for now, and Saren agrees since they've made enough progress for today, so he uses his divine sword skill to clear a path to the exit and tells everyone to run as fast as they can. However, after walking through the door, they find themselves cornered by even more monsters, so their chances of escaping are looking slim. Just then, Tsukasa remembers that before they came out on this mission, the princess had given him a special smoke bomb which she said would scare monsters away, so he decides to give it a shot and tosses it at the orcs. But to his horror, the smoke bomb actually turns the orc into a minotaur that's much stronger than anything they've faced so far. By the time Oda and Jill arrive, the party is already on the verge of defeat, so Oda springs into action and tries stabbing it in the back of the neck, but its hide is way too tough for him to pierce, so his sword shatters on impact. Oda is forced to fall back and find Tsukasa kneeling on the floor with a broken arm. He's in the middle of a serious mental breakdown because he can't handle the fact that he's not strong enough to defeat the Minotaur on his own. Oda knows Tsukasa has a strong sense of responsibility, but he has never been one to crumble under pressure like this, so he gets the feeling that somebody did something to him. He asks the party's disenchanter to try casting Dispel Curse on him to see what happens, and sure enough, the remnants of a curse are seen floating off his head, so someone definitely planned this whole attack and Oda has a good idea of who's behind it. While Tsukasa's curse is being dispelled, Oda tells Saren that he plans to give his new skill a try, so Saren launches a flash of lightning at the Minotaur, and as it is being electrocuted, Oda activates his shadow magic. Dark tendrils begin to emerge from the shadows before piercing the Minotaur where it stands. Once it has been restrained, Oda begins pulling it into the shadows until its entire body is devoured, leaving only its head behind. However, while he may have successfully killed the Minotaur, he still doesn't have full control over his shadow powers, so he begins struggling to keep them from going out of control. Fortunately, Saren comes to his aid to help him remain calm until he is eventually able to withdraw the tendrils. After the battle is over, everyone returns to the castle, and Saren congratulates Oda on a successful mission. It's thanks to him that everyone managed to make it home safely, but while his shadow skill may be incredibly powerful, it also takes a massive toll on him, so Saren tells Oda to avoid using it unless absolutely necessary. He tells Oda that he has a gift for him, so he hands him a katana. He says the blade was forged by the first hero who was summoned centuries ago, and Oda is grateful for it, but he wonders why Saren is giving it to him instead of the current hero of Tsukasa. Saren explains that Tsukasa was already given a holy sword to use in battle, plus the king would definitely notice that something was wrong if he saw Tsukasa wielding the katana since Saren kind of stole it from the royal armory. Oda understands, so he accepts the katana, and he thinks it's cool that he gets to use the same sword as the former hero. But speaking of heroes, he recalls that the situation with Tsukasa hasn't gotten any better. They were able to figure out that he was cursed, but while some of the symptoms were alleviated by the disenchantment spell, the curse itself still persisted, and Oda plans to find out why. Later that night, Oda sneaks into the princess's room and finds her in the middle of strengthening the curse on Tsukasa with a magic crystal and turning him into a puppet. But before she could finish her spells, Oda takes action and slices the crystal in half. This should take care of the curse for now, but he still has a few questions he'd like to ask her, so he points his sword at her throat and demands to know why she is doing this. The princess coldly says that everything she does is for the sake of the king, so he asks her why she is following his orders, but upon closer inspection, he notices that there's not a single original thought going on behind those eyes. She's obviously being controlled as well, and it wouldn't be right to kill her if she's not doing this of her own free will, so Oda simply leaves. However, he probably should have taken her out anyway because as soon as he is gone, she goes into her closet full of cursed crystals for each of his classmates and begins using those instead. A little while later, Oda takes the crystals to Saren and asks if he knows anything about it. Saren has definitely seen these crystals before, and he mutters to himself that he can't believe the king hasn't given up on this yet. That aside, he asks Oda if he revealed himself to the princess while he destroyed the crystal, and he admits that he did, but only because he wanted to find out what she's thinking and why she's doing all this. Saren tells him that the princess is nothing more than a puppet for the king at this point, but Oda has done enough for today, so Saren says he should go to sleep. But he advises Oda not to rest on castle grounds any longer. The princess is definitely going to try cursing everyone aside from Tsukasa now, but she doesn't know who Oda is, so she has no control over him. She may not know exactly who he is, but now that she is aware that there is an assassin on castle grounds, Saren is sure the guards will spend the night searching every nook and cranny, so Oda won't be able to hide in storage closets anymore. Oda apologizes for revealing himself without thinking of the consequences, but Saren tells him there's no need to apologize. Making mistakes is a natural part of youth, so it's Saren's job as an adult to help him handle the aftermath. Oda says he is grateful that he has someone like Saren looking out for him. And Saren says that if he really wants to express his gratitude, then Oda should bring him along once he finally finds a way to return to Japan. Oda spends the night out in one of the trees, but he is woken up when he hears a huge commotion early in the castle. He wonders what could possibly be going on so early in the morning, so he heads over to take a look. He finds a few guards and his classmates gathered around, and once Tsukasa spots him approaching, he is relieved to see Oda again. Oda is glad to see that the curse on Tsukasa was broken, but Tsukasa looks panicked and asks him where he has been. Oda explains that he was just taking a nap and asks what's going on here. He had expected something mundane, but to his horror, he found Commander Saren lying on the floor with a dagger through his chest. Oda breaks down and asks who could do such a thing. But suddenly, all of his classmates turn on him, accusing him of being the killer. The dagger in Saren's chest is the same one they saw Oda using just a day ago. That would be compelling evidence against him, but they literally saw his dagger shatter against the Minotaur in the dungeon, so this one couldn't be his. Even so, his classmates all say he is way too suspicious because he is always disappearing and appearing whenever he wants. Oda realizes that the princess must have successfully cursed all of his classmates for them to be acting this way, so the only one who is still normal is Tsukasa. He tries sticking up for Oda since it's not fair to accuse him of murder without any evidence, but all of a sudden, the king shows up and announces that Oda is being charged with treason for the murder of Commander Saren, so he orders the guards to execute him immediately. Oda sees a smile flash across the princess's face, and in that moment, he realizes that he is being set up, so no amount of explaining will be enough to get him out of this mess. As the guards are about to stab him, he activates his concealment skill and disappears from view, so the king orders his men to spread out and search everywhere for him. In the meantime, Oda sneaks up next to Jill since he knows he is trustworthy. And once he gets Jill's attention, he is informed that the real culprits behind Saren's death were the king's personal assassins, and now they'll be coming after Oda next, so he is going to have to go on the run. Jill explains that Saren had anticipated something like this happening, so he prepared a bag of supplies ahead of time for Oda to use. Oda thanks Jill for the information, and after gathering the provisions, he leaves the kingdom. That night, the king and princess meet to discuss the plan's progress, and the king is honestly surprised by how easy it was to take out Saren, but it's a good thing the assassins were able to deal with him quickly. The princess has also finished applying curses to all the students aside from Tsukasa, so now they just need some sort of justification to start a war with the nation of the East. The king says the students will be useful pawns for him in the war, and as for the one who managed to get away, he's sure a kid like him wouldn't be able to survive on his own out there, but just to be safe, he tells the princess to send the Night Raven assassins after him. Meanwhile, Oda has just arrived at the dungeon since Saren once told him it's the best place to hide out if you're on the run. Practically no one would bother searching a dungeon just to find you, so it should be safe in there, but water and food are limited, so Oda needs to be careful. Even with Oda's concealment skill, there are still a lot of monsters down there that can detect him with their heightened smell or hearing, but as Oda's assassin class levels up, he will eventually be able to mask his scent, the sound of his footsteps, and even his heat signature until he becomes truly undetectable. There are bosses every 10 levels, and once you enter a boss room, you won't be able to leave unless you kill the boss, so going in alone is a risky gamble, but it's not like he has much of a choice if he wants to progress further. As soon as he steps inside, he is immediately confronted by a chimera, and while he is able to dodge its strikes at first, he gets caught off guard when its snake tail starts spitting venom, so he gets hit in the leg. As a result of the damage, he can't move as fast as he did before, so the chimera is able to pierce his back with its claws. But just as it was about to finish him off, Oda decided to use his trump card and cast shadow magic to completely obliterate the chimera. He successfully defeated the first dungeon boss, but the injuries he suffered, combined with the exhaustion from using the shadow skill, left him in critical condition. The shadow skill recognizes that there's a risk of its master dying, so while Oda is still unconscious, it automatically switches from attack to recovery mode and begins healing his wounds. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Tsukasa has just asked everyone to leave the castle with him. They ask if he's saying he wants to go hunt the Demon King right now, and that sounds like a good excuse, so Tsukasa goes with that, but his classmates all tell him to shut up and sit back down because they aren't going anywhere. He realizes that their behavior must be an effect of the curse that Saren told him about before he was killed, and if it's true that all of his classmates are being mind-controlled, then he's just going to have to leave on his own. However, to his surprise, a few of his classmates actually do agree to leave with him, and a few hours later, they are all standing outside the city limits. They're surprised that they managed to get out so easily, but it makes sense since their excuse was that they wanted to fight the Demon Lord, and it wouldn't make sense for the king to stop them from completing their mission. That aside, Tsukasa wonders why the others chose to join him when everyone else refused to even consider it, so Yuki tells him that she doesn't think anyone here is currently afflicted by the princess's curse. Asakina adds that he thinks his actions might have played a part in breaking them free from the curse, since even though he's not sure why he did it, He has fuzzy memories of himself sneaking into the princess's room and shattering a bunch of crystals in there. We later find out that Jill was the one responsible for it because he used his manipulation skill to take control of Asahina's body in order to undo the curse. And even if he was only able to break a few of the students free, he is glad he managed to fulfill Seren's last wish. As the group leaves the kingdom, Asahina thinks to himself that he needs to find a way to reconnect with Oda somehow. He wishes he had tried to find him while he was still staying hidden within the castle, and regardless of the fact that he was cursed, he feels terrible about not standing up for his friend. Most people in class never really spoke to Oda much, but one day while walking home from school, Asahina happened to run into Oda while he was working a construction job. This was the first time they had met outside school, so Oda asked him to keep his job a secret since he didn't want his little sister to find out about it. Asahina promised to keep the secret since he knows what it's like to look after a little sister. And it just so happened that both of their sisters were best friends, so they had a good laugh about the coincidence. Meanwhile, down in the dungeon, Oda has just regained consciousness, and for some reason he recalls having a dream about the day he met Asahina. He really hopes Asahina is doing alright, and he is just as worried about his mom and sister back in Japan, but after he is done worrying, he suddenly comes to the realization that he isn't in excruciating pain even though he got his back clawed out by the Chimera. He calls out for his status screen, and from what he can see, his stats went up a lot from defeating the Chimera, but that doesn't explain why his HP is almost full despite all the damage he took in that fight. He also notices that his shadow magic skill is now level 3, and he doesn't understand how it could have gone up so much after he only used it once, but he has no time to think about it. Therefore, he decides to keep moving. Further down in the dungeon, he ends up running into a giant slime, and after cutting it open, he finds a pretty elf girl inside. He thinks this is the perfect opportunity to try out one of the new skills he got from leveling up, World's Eye. He activates the skill, and all at once, every bit of information about the girl's life comes flooding into Oda's mind, but it's way too overwhelming for him to process it all, so he cancels the skill halfway. The girl barely has 2% of her HP left, so Oda carries her up to the 69th floor and sets her down by a pool of water so she can rest. She later wakes up and Oda hands her some water to drink to make her feel better. He tells Emilia she should get some more sleep so she can recover properly, but she says she's too hungry to sleep, so he makes her a bowl of porridge. The girl is grateful for the food and starts eating right away. After she's done eating, she asks Oda how she got here since she remembers being further down in the dungeon, and he explains that this was the closest watering hole, so he carried her up. She's surprised that he went out of his way to look after her even though they've never met before, because that's the nicest thing anyone has ever done for her. A few hours later, Emilia is back to full strength, and she and Oda have made it all the way down to the 80th floor, but Oda wonders why she is following him since he assumed that she would want to return to the surface as soon as possible. Emilia tells him she came down here to clear the dungeon just like him, so she's not leaving until she has accomplished her goal. The two make their way into the floor boss room, and the second they set foot inside, they are attacked by a dragon. They both jump out of the way, and Emilia uses gravity magic to weigh the dragon down while Oda goes for a finishing blow. However, the dragon was somehow able to locate him and swats Oda out of the air. Emilia tells him that the dragon is probably tracking his mana signature, so he should diffuse it into the surroundings, but Oda has no idea how to do that, so he does the next best thing and uses pure mana to launch an attack at the dragon before stabbing it to death through the eyes. The dragon falls to the ground defeated, but Emilia is confused by what Oda just did, so he explains that he didn't know how to diffuse his mana into the surroundings, so he just used the surrounding mana to attack instead. Emilia is shocked to learn that he is capable of such a thing, but before she could ask for more information, the dragon corpse suddenly begins glowing. This was the end of episode 2. Subscribe to not miss the next part.